Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the April 2023 meeting of the Montgomery County Civic Federation. My name is Alan Bowser. I'm the current president of Civic Fed. Thank you all for joining us. We have an exciting program this evening. We have some Federation business to take care of at the outset. The first order of business is to approve the agenda for tonight's meeting. The agenda is on page 2 of our April newsletter. Is there a motion to approve the
Motion to
agenda?
approve.
Is there a second? It's been first and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. The agenda is approved. Next order of business is to approve the minutes from the March 13th meeting of the Civic, is that correct? The meeting minutes from March 13th on page 25 of the newsletter. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
It's been first. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been first and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Abstentions? Seeing none, the minutes for the March 13th meeting are approved. Next order of business is the treasurer's report. Jerry Garson is our treasurer. Jerry?
We operate on a fiscal year from July 1, 2022 and through April 10th, which is today. We've had $1,018 of dues that we've collected. We've had expenses of $1,835. Most of that was our recent insurance of $607. And it gives us a net deficit for the period of $817, and our current bank balance is $8,494. If there are any questions, speak to me or send me an email.
Thank you, Jerry. This is the time in our meeting where we entertain announcements for the good of the order. Does anybody have any announcements they'd like to make? This is a good chance. We've got 44 people on the call right now. I always have announcements to make, and I'll make this one. As many of you know, there's going to be a public hearing on Andrew Friedsten's bill to basically eliminate the Office of the People's Counsel on April 18th. We're asking people to sign up for the public hearing and express your thoughts in favor or in opposition to the bill. The Civic Federation supports resumed funding, new funding for the Office of the People's Counsel and the County Executive's budget. I'll put in the chat a link to the sign up for the public hearing. It's waitlisted now, but we hope as many people as possible will sign up for that hearing. That'll be an indication to the county council that there's a lot of attention to this particular issue. Those of you who can't sign up for and get your name on the wait list, please take advantage of this opportunity to send a short email to the county council expressing your views in support of the office. There is a sample letter in the April newsletter. It is on page 11. Please feel free to use that if it's helpful. If you'd like to write something else, lots of letters have already gone to the council, including a very strong letter from the Montgomery Countryside Alliance. I noted, and some people have brought this to my attention, that this is something that getting rid of the Office of the People's Counsel is something that former council member Roger Berliner proposed in 2016. If you Google Berliner resource officer, you'll see that this conversation is not a new one. So please help us support county executives recommended funding for the Office of the People's Counsel. There's 2 hands up. Eric Cathcart, did you have something to say?
Yeah, thanks, Alan. I just want to make an announcement that my Civic is
Co-sponsoring a paper shredding and electronics recycling event this Saturday at Parkside, the old Parkside Parks headquarters in Silver Spring. It's a free event. I'll put a link to the splash page. Our prime partner is One Montgomery Green. We're doing free shredding as much as anybody wants, electronics recycling, the food drive, but just a ton of other things. Actually starts at 9 a.m. and goes to 1 p.m. We've got a food truck. We're expecting about 300 cars. So this is a good chance to clean house and clean spring. And we're just a week ahead of Earth Week. So I'll put a link in the chat. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you, Eric. Another fantastic idea from North Hills of Sligo. Peggy Dennis, you're muted.
Okay, now?
Go ahead.
Thank you. Going back to the county council hearing, I know there's a wait list. Lots and lots of people should sign up to speak. You can do it knowing you will be on the wait list, but if they have hundreds of people on the wait list, that's going to really be of concern to them. So go ahead and sign up. I was on the wait list initially. I am now signed up to speak as a private individual, and Liz Joyce is going to be speaking on behalf of the Civic Federation. Lots more people on that wait list. Go, 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 go.
Thank you, Peggy. Any other announcements for the group?
Were we going to post that in the chat, the link for the sign up? Oh, there it is.
I am going to. That's not, yeah, that's Rich's presentation. I'm going to put in a link for the sign up for the public hearing
Thanks.
as soon as Rich begins to talk. And I'm going to turn it over to Jerry to introduce our guests. And Rich will talk for a while, then I'll answer some questions. Please be respectful. And thank you all for joining us tonight. Jerry.
I'd like to introduce Rich Madaleno, who was appointed as Montgomery County's Chief Administrative Officer in 2020. The Montgomery County Chief Administrative Officer is the second highest ranking executive branch position after the county executive. Rich is responsible for overseeing operations and services of over 30 executive branch departments with $5.5 billion of operating budget. And he's done a wonderful job at reading the budget stuff. And I've known Rich for a long time when he was previously a state senator in Annapolis, Maryland, and he was an expert on the state budget. And without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Rich Madaleno.
Thank you, Jerry, very much for that. Thank you. I'm trying to hopefully share my screen correctly.
Looks good.
So hopefully people are now seeing the beginning of a PowerPoint presentation. But
yes, it's there.
great. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be with you. As Jerry said, I'm the Chief Administrative Officer for the county government. So that puts me as the senior civil servant for the county government. And I've been doing that since the summer of 2020. Prior to that, I was the Director of the Office of Management and Budget. I served 16 years in the state legislature. I worked for the county government for 7 years during the Duncan administration. So I'm a county native, for those of you who don't know. Grew up in Silver Spring and currently reside in Kensington. I always fond of telling people that in 1968, my parents moved our family to the White Oak area, and we've been here ever since. Not to out her, but my mother is on this call. So everyone, you got to be, you know, when I think Alan said, be respectful, just want to let you know, you know, if you're not nice to me, my mother is coming after you. So she's disguised herself on the call as Kathy, using her maiden name, iPhone. So if you see Kathy iPhone on it, that's my mother, and I'll be the first to tell you. She said to me last night, I've been proud of much of what you've done in your career. I'm not too sure about this budget. So hopefully by the end of tonight, she'll be convinced of the county executive's plan. So just to give you a little background about the budget, it's important to note that of county revenues, we overwhelmingly get our county tax revenues from two sources: the income tax and the property tax. Maryland is unique in the country amongst the 50 states that not only allows its local governments to have an income tax, it actually mandates each of the counties to have an income tax, and it has to range between 2.5% and 3.2%. So most counties in Maryland are in fact at the 3.2% maximum. It is more or less a flat tax rate. There aren't brackets, so you pay 3.2% on your first dollar of taxable income. Now that might be not your first dollar of income, but your first dollar of taxable income. There are a lot of things that that shield part of your income from tax liability, but that's how the income tax works. And of course, in property taxes, Maryland allows the local governments to have a property tax as well. The state has a property tax of 11.5 cents. Montgomery County has currently a property tax. For those of you who live pretty much in the 2/3 of the down county, not in a municipality, it's 99 cents. For some of you who live in a municipality, that property tax rate can be higher. For those of you who live outside of the metropolitan district of the county, there can be a slightly lower rate. So the average weighted rate for non-municipal residents is 99 cents. We have we have a transfer tax and recordation tax. So transfer tax, so when you're transferring property; a recordation tax when you're recording a change in a deed that has a financial impact. So if you are refinancing your house and taking a portion of the equity out, you pay a recordation tax on that portion, that amount of equity you've taken out of the house, not on the full amount of the mortgage. You're buying a new house, you pay a tax based upon the full amount of the mortgage. So
Rich, are you advancing your PowerPoint?
I'm not because this gets into, I'm purposely not doing it, Alan, because there aren't slides on this. I'm just giving some basic background about our tax structure. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, check it.
So when it comes to our tax structure, and I'm happy to have this conversation, we have a tax structure that has been in place for many decades now, and it definitely reflects a Montgomery County of the 60s, 70s, a county that was having consistent growth of new single-family homes being built as the development went kind of up the 29 corridor, up the 270 corridor, and all these new housing developments were being built. So even when there were slowdowns in the overall economy, there were still always new housing being built and money coming in from the income tax and the recordation tax. That really has changed as the county is more or less built out of available property when it comes to single family homes, townhomes. There just isn't that much more room for the 500 house developments that maybe those of us who've been around for a while were used to seeing going up in a variety of places. So the income tax and the transfer tax and the recordation tax are tied clearly to the real estate market, to the refinancing market. So interest rates have a huge impact on those two sources. And of course, higher than recent mortgage rates have brought the home sales and refinancing down significantly. And that is the material difference in our revenues from last year to the current year and to the projection. Now, for those of you who owned a house in the 1970s, you're used to a tax rate. I remember, and I think my mother confirmed that their first house that they bought in Silver Spring had like a 17% mortgage rate on it, interest rate. So the rates now at 6% are high for our most recent past, but clearly for mortgages in our lifetimes, it is still on the lower end. So that's a little bit about the basics of our tax structure in Maryland. The important thing to note is every state does things a little bit differently, right? Virginia has no local income tax. They have a higher state income tax, but no local income tax. But Virginia still has a car tax. So you pay not only a property tax on your home, you pay a property tax on your cars. For most people, a two-car family making $200,000, your car tax is going to be actually very close to what the local income tax is in Maryland. So for most people, the car tax in Virginia, especially if your income is below $100,000, your car tax bill is actually going to be higher than your Maryland or Montgomery County local income tax. So just to give some points of reference, always very proud to say that every year the District of Columbia government, so not us, the DC government, does a comparison of all the local governments in the region, and they come up with sample households of a variety of incomes. And in their report every year, the District of Columbia has the lowest tax burden because they have an unusually low residential property tax rate because they have a much higher commercial property tax rate. And in Maryland, you can only have one tax rate for all types of properties. DC always comes out at the lowest. We are the second lowest, and everyone is above us. So don't trust me, trust the Chief Financial Officer of the District of Columbia, and he will tell you that Montgomery County, again, has consistently the second lowest tax burden in the region. So on to this presentation about the budget. So our fiscal year starts on July 1st. So the budget that the county executive submitted will start July 1st and run until June 30th of FY24. What did the executive propose in this budget? Well, key investments in, first of all, providing the services that we know county residents need, whether it's police protection, fire protection, social services, clean roads, filling potholes, plowing snow, if we ever have snow, which I feel confident we're not having snow until next winter at this point. So we have more than 1 million people in this county. It's a complex and diverse community. And so this budget provides all the services that we have grown accustomed to. It provides record funding for the Montgomery County Public Schools. It fully funds the Montgomery College request from the county. We continue to provide funding for climate change and other environmental initiatives. The county executive is clearly not the only elected official in this country that talks about climate change being the true long-term existential threat that we face as a community, as a country, as a species. So we have to get our hands around this issue and make progress. And so whether it's replacing our diesel buses over the next several years with electric buses, it's finding a way for us to save electricity across the whole county government to meet all of our goals to be carbon free by I believe 2035. We're moving ahead with this. You may have seen 2 weeks ago, the county executive was in Taiwan. He was invited to come to Taiwan for a global conference to present our climate action plan, because we are seen not just as a national leader amongst local governments with what we're doing to fight climate change, but as a global leader. So we are continuing to put investments into economic development and workforce training, recognizing that growing businesses here, helping entrepreneurs start, are a great way to continue to grow the tax base and the wealth of the community, especially as we enter a period of potential uncertainty economically. We are adding small business staff, staff that we have not had for years in the county, and actually have them going out, literally going door to door in business communities, asking businesses about what they need, how we can help, letting them know about all of the different state and local programs to help businesses. As Alan talked about, this reestablishes funding for the Office of People's Counsel. If you don't know what the Office of People's Counsel is, it is a parallel to something that exists at the state, where there's the Maryland Office of People's Counsel, which represents the public in cases before the Public Service Commission, where utilities are coming in and asking for rate increases. The whole idea is that utilities have a lot of money, a lot of staff, a lot of lawyers who can come in and talk about why they need rate increases. The People's Counsel represents the consumers in the back and forth before this quasi-judicial body, the Public Service Commission, to make determinations about rate increases. Well, the idea of a local Office of People's Counsel is to provide the same sort of service representing the public and their interests in decisions that are before the planning board, because obviously development interests, developers before the planning board to lay out their plans for changes that they want to make around zoning, land use, specific developments. And it's hard for individuals, community groups to compete on that level. So this would provide, in essence, that same sort of legal advice and representation to the public for these decisions that would be before the Montgomery County Planning Board, a quasi-judicial body making determinations about land use and developments. So that's why the executive has proposed again reestablishing the Office of People's Counsel. We are obviously able to do so much in the community because of all of our nonprofits that we partner with. We have additional support for them, and ways that we are trying to make sure more and more different communities around the county, especially the more recent immigrant communities and the organizations that serve them, also know that they can apply for this sort of assistance. And of course, one of the things that the county executive and the council have worked together over the last 5 years is making sure that we make budgetary decisions, both with looking through a racial equity lens and a climate change lens, so that we understand the different impacts that the budget is making on different aspects of the community and of course on our climate. So as we went into this budget cycle, obviously the county government is dealing with a variety of pressures, high inflation and a variety of other cost increases for county services to run the buses, fire trucks, police cars. We got to put fuel in them. Obviously the cost of fuel has gone up, even though we are very aggressive and I think shrewd at how we purchase fuel. We are able to do bulk purchases in connection with, in collaboration with other local governments to make sure we get the lowest prices, and in fact, quite lower than any of us can put gas in our cars, but still those prices have increased. We are dealing with the end of a lot of both direct support that we've received from the federal government for COVID response through things like the CARES Act and the American Rescue Plan that President Biden got through Congress 2 years ago. But with the public health emergency ending May 11th, that will end our ability to seek federal assistance through the Federal Emergency Management Administration, FEMA, for some of the services that we have been providing. So we are having to make a decision about how we handle COVID response moving forward. Do we continue to do testing and vaccines? Do we continue to provide support to families and organizations that have been dealing with the repercussions of COVID. So the county executive has proposed to the council that we have to continue some of those services, and we're going to have to do it on our own. So whether it's direct food assistance, where we are probably doing more, I feel confident saying we are doing more than any other local government in this region and putting out direct assistance for food. We provide a match to the state earned income tax credit to help make sure lower income workers are able to support their families. It is if you don't know what the earned income tax credit or the refundable earned income tax credit is, the federal level, it was an initiative of the Nixon administration, which has been seen as one of the most effective poverty fighting campaigns. And it has had bipartisan support at Congress for years. The states have moved forward with providing assistance, their own earned income tax credit and refundable tax credit, which is a portion of, it's usually stated as a percentage of the state credit, of the federal credit. And Montgomery County is one of 2 jurisdictions around the country that matches its state refund with a local refund. And so we are proposing to keep that up. It will have some additional cost to it because the Moore administration has successfully argued for an increase in that, which means if we want to stick with it, we have to match those dollars. So we have increased demands for county services across the board with people who, whether it's the number of emergency medical calls we're responding to, the number of fire calls we're responding to, as the population continues to grow, as the population continues to age. We have the oldest average age in the Washington region. So we are operating a very extensive mobile medical system through fire and rescue services. We're going to be able to continue to provide those services, continue to upgrade our equipment. All of that costs money. Obviously, in police, we know that policing and finding police officers is a challenge that every law enforcement agency across the country is facing. In our region, we are down between the federal, state, and local government. We are down thousands of law enforcement positions, whether you're looking at the FBI, the U.S. Capitol Police, the Washington Metropolitan Police Department, Montgomery County, Fairfax County, Prince George's County. Everyone is down with law enforcement, and you can see the impact that has in crime and the way and the perception, both the reality and the perception of crime. We are doing our best to hire more police officers. We've instituted a $20,000 hiring bonus to bring police on. We have, as a result of announcing that bonus, we have had by far the greatest interest in people signing up for the police academy than we've had for years. So we're excited about the opportunity to bring on more police officers, but the cost of police, to be competitive in the region, to make sure we're not just competitive, but we are towards the top so that we can recruit and retain the best police officers. There's a cost to that. Plus, because we are down police officers, we are investing in technology that will help our police and law enforcement efforts. For example, we will be amongst the first police departments, I believe, on the East Coast to be, no pun intended, launching a drone as first responder program in the Down County area. The concept of a drone first responder is it gets a camera up in the air so that, say someone has called in and said there's been an accident or there's been a shooting, and I saw the suspect fleeing down this street. We can get the drone there faster than we can get a police officer and start to monitor the situation, start to be able to say, oh, there's someone calls in saying there's someone threatening our community with a gun. Find that person and then direct the police officer to the correct location and give them a sense of what they're driving into. So it's a way to make sure our law enforcement response has additional tools to make them more effective. We've stood up a camera system. It's not, if you're fond as I am of watching the series of Dick Wolf shows on CBS that start with the FBI, they're always sitting in a joint command system with center with all these cameras and following what's happening in New York City. We don't have anything quite like that, but we have launched our first information center where we have police officers who have access to cameras, our cameras from all over the county, and then some cameras that businesses can sign up for and give us access to their cameras. So if we're trying to follow a suspect on a street in Bethesda, we are able to access a variety of different cameras so that we can, again, direct law enforcement to where they need to go in order to track a suspect or find a victim. So we are trying to do the best we can to increase that sort of technology that will directly then help us deal with law enforcement. We're dealing with a competitive labor market. We employ, for example, a lot of nurses, whether it's a nurse in our correctional facility, nurses in our schools, nurses in our STD clinic. There are a variety of things that we do. Well, obviously, during the pandemic, we have seen a huge demand in nursing. There are, between the private hospitals, nursing homes, in-home care, local governments, there are so many people competing for nurses, and nurses who, in many ways, were overtaxed from the amount of work that they had to do through COVID. It's a very tight labor market to find qualified nurses, and we're trying to make sure we can continue to employ as many of our own nurses, because quite frankly, if we're dealing with a state regulation that requires health room techs, nurses in our school system, if we can't employ the nurse ourselves, we wind up having to backfill in order to meet our legal obligations to provide that health care. Then we have to go out and find contractual staff. And we all know these stories about contractual nurses being, in fact, much more expensive than hiring your own nurses. So, we have to keep up our labor demands with the demands of the labor market. And I would just remind everyone that when it comes to just not our county government, but local governments around the country, we're the level of government that actually spends the majority of its money on employing people, because we employ firefighters, police officers, social workers, nurses, bus drivers. And then, of course, we fund the school system, which employs teachers and bus drivers and librarians and cafeteria workers, a range of people across the county government, the school system, the community college. We're talking about in excess of 40,000 people working for a variety of public agencies in the county. That is costly, but really, when you think about all the different services the county government provides, police, fire, health and human services, in so many ways, we are employing not just a lot of people, but a lot of people who do very difficult work dealing with our residents on often the worst day of their lives, the most taxing, difficult days of their lives, the most expensive days of their lives. We're dealing with people, in the middle of cardiac arrest and their family members. We're dealing with accident victims. We're dealing with crime victims. So we are dealing with people who are turning to the government for assistance because they've run out of opportunities. We're inspecting a new home construction that someone has their life savings in, and trying to make sure it's safe for residency. So you've got people, we're out there in the community, again, dealing with some of the most difficult situations our residents will face in their lifetimes. And that takes a toll on people. That work needs to be, in my humble opinion, and the county executive's humble opinion, rewarded for the many contributions it provides to our community, because without that protection, if we were, if we all had to pay for our own fire, our own police, for a lot of these other services, it would be, in fact, much more costly. And of course, when it comes to the school system, we're dealing with the impact of COVID and learning loss that has occurred over the last 2 years. The county executive, when he came into office, he had us totally revamp the way that we go out and we ask for public solicit advice on the budget. We've moved all of our forums to much earlier in the budget process, and we have them in all 5 of our regional service areas. This year we had a forum entirely in Spanish. We had a forum entirely in Chinese. We had a forum during the day at Leisure World geared specifically to the senior population. So we offer all of them online as well so that people can participate. So, and they're done in a way that the county executive can use that feedback and make, hopefully include some of the ideas that he has heard from the public. So a little bit about the condition of the county. For years, the county has sought to hit a reserve target, so our savings account, what you might call our rainy day fund, at 10% of what we refer to as adjusted governmental revenues. So an amount equal to 10% of all of our tax revenues, all of our state aid, even the tuition of the community college. We want to make sure we have an amount equal to 10% of that. Well, we have been so prudent and cautious during this administration that we've actually been able to move that number from when the executive came in, which was in the 7% range. Now we're at 14%. We've done such a good job of putting money into reserves. And so the executive is proposing using part of that surplus to fund our budget this year, because why else, if we are projecting a recession, and we are projecting a mild recession, as our financial advisors have told us to do so. If we're going to have a small blip, the county executive is proposing using part of that surplus to fill in that gap to get us to FY25, where all of the current projections show revenue growth starting in a more robust way again in 25, and considering what happens with interest rates, and this is always very hard to project the real estate market, but a lowering of interest rates with huge demand right now demographically for people in their 20s and 30s to get out and actually buy real estate, single family homes, townhouses, that hopefully that market, we expect that market to return. All the projections show if interest rates go below 6%, certainly go below 5%, you're going to see a robust return to real estate activity, which means, again, a big uptake on our transfer tax and recordation tax. So even with all of that, with what the county executive is proposing with using our surplus, we would still have 11.4% of our adjusted governmental revenues in reserves, which again is almost $90 million more than where we need to be. And because we are amongst the most aggressive local governments in the country going out for reimbursement from the federal government for our COVID responses, we've put in excess of $200 million in requests for reimbursement for our services, and any money that we get out of those requests goes again right back into backfilling our reserves. So we could very well be in a situation where we get what we've submitted for, and we've been very good at our submissions and getting almost every penny that we've put in for. This would put us almost exactly back to where we were at the beginning of the year with reserves. So now getting a little bit into the school system, again, reiterating, COVID has had a tremendous impact on our students. We've seen the learning loss. We've seen the test scores not certainly anywhere close to where we would hope they would be. And the school board, in order to address this issue, deal with both the opening of new schools, the need to be, again, highly competitive for teachers. I don't know if people realize this, the District of Columbia has instituted a starting salary for teachers at $75,000 for students, just for starting teachers coming out of college. It's not enough for us to be in the $57,000 range to compete with DC. Now we have some built-in advantages, but that doesn't mean we can be that far of a gap from our neighboring jurisdictions. So the school system asked for a $296 million increase this year. Almost all of that is associated with staff salaries, the opening of some new schools and additions, the increase in enrollment that will require additional staff, as well as an expansion into special ed services that is required for us under the Blueprint for Maryland's Future, which is the landmark education reform program that the state instituted 3 years ago. And that has the promise of making us a truly globally competitive school system in the county and the state. But just like in other places around the world, it's going to cost money in order for us to compete. You know, it's one thing to be able to outperform Mississippi and Louisiana from a public school standpoint, but we all know we're living in a global economy where we need our students to be able to have the skills to compete with not just kids from Massachusetts and New Jersey that are seen as having, good for you, Alan, for having the best public schools in the country. We need to be able to compete with students who are being educated in Finland, in Denmark, in Germany, in Alberta and Ontario, in Canada, in Shanghai, Singapore, Beijing, and across Japan. So we need these are the school systems in the parts of the world where their public schools produce always the best students. That's who we're competing against. That's the type of investment we need. And that's why the county executive, in order to fully fund this commitment to the school system, is proposing a 10-cent increase in the property tax. Now, I love going back to this data point. When I started kindergarten in Montgomery County, we had a school system of roughly 130,000 students. We had a community that was 95% white, and not only did it have less racial and ethnic diversity to it, it had a lot less economic diversity, as far as it being a true, overwhelmingly middle-class community. And at that time, the property tax rate was $1.50, and the income tax rate was 2.5%. So here we are now, 50 years later, we have a far more diverse community. We have no majority population in our community. While whites still make up the largest percentage within the community, whites are no longer a majority in the county, as they are not in any community that touches the Beltway or inside the Beltway, except for Arlington County. I don't know if people realize this. Arlington County is the only inner community in the Washington metropolitan area that still has a white majority. So Fairfax County, Prince William, Alexandria, Prince George's, Montgomery, we have all moved to being a majority non-white communities. But because of that diversity, because of that linguistic diversity and the number of limited English proficient students, because of the way we have learned about the different style that students learn and the different disabilities that they face, that we have a far more expensive and extensive school system, and we have a property tax rate that has gone from $1.50 to 99 cents. And so that's why the county executive is proposing this one-time increase in 10 cents in a supplemental education tax. State law provides the local governments to create a supplemental property tax, for education, dedicated solely to education. So this 10 cents by state law would just go to the school system and no other aspect of county government. Part of the reason why he is proposing this is if you look at this chart and the two solid lines on the chart, the blue line shows the actual growth from FY 2001 to FY24, what he's proposing. The solid line shows the actual dollar amounts, and you can see the dollar amounts have gone up. There was obviously the dip following the Great Recession of 2008 to 10, but then you can see a steady increase over time. And certainly the gray line, which shows total funding, you can see how state aid in particular has picked up. I'm proud of my service in the General Assembly of trying to alter the formulas so that we would get more money. It's clearly worked as we're getting a higher percentage of our funding from the state. But when you adjust it for inflation, we are in fact not keeping pace with where we were in that pre-recession number. So you can see we peaked in FY10 at 22,131, and even with this tax increase, we would just be at 19,554. So without that increase and that drop, we would be even less. So that's why the executive feels it's imperative at this moment to provide that support for the school system. You might think that we spend more than other jurisdictions, and there's no question we put more of our the largest amount of money in the state into our schools because we have by far the largest school system in the state. But when you look at the per pupil allocation, we are behind, and you can see where, hopefully you can see where on the right-hand side, where Montgomery County is for FY23. This chart at the bottom axis is showing the enrollment in the school system, and then the access on the left-hand side is showing the per pupil appropriation. So we're on the far right side. You can see we've got the largest school system, but we are behind funding for Anne Arundel County, Baltimore City, Howard County, Baltimore County, with the per pupil money we are providing. And even with that increase, we'll jump ahead of Anne Arundel County and Baltimore City, but not Howard County and Baltimore County, both of which have much higher property taxes. So Howard County is charging $1.25 for property taxes and 3.2% on the income tax. So, you know, you've got a situation there where, yes, people say, oh, look, people are moving to Howard County, or the Howard County schools might have a perception of being better right now. Well, part of it is they're providing the local effort into their school system that we are no longer providing as a community. So that's why we need to put, and that's why the county executive has proposed this budget plan to put more money. I've gone over many of these issues that are on the slide. So if passed, it would be the largest ever budget for the county public schools. Not a surprise, it would be the largest increase ever for the schools. It would definitely be above the state's maintenance of effort requirement. In fact, this year, with the way the formulas work, we could actually cut the funding for the school system and still meet the state's maintenance of effort requirements. But that's something that I'm positive most Montgomery County residents would not go for. You can see some of the other funding for children that's listed here, including money for early care and education as we stand up both with state support and with our own funds, better quality early care. So for that 2- and 3-year-olds, we're going to have universal pre-K in the schools as a result of the blueprint. So other things that we're doing, you've heard me talk a little bit about how the county is going to be continuing support for our services, especially, for example, continuing our food programs. We've just launched an Office of Food Systems Resilience, so as to look at both ways that we can deal with food insecurity, but also ways that we can deal with supporting local agriculture, buying local, and doing other things to make sure people have access to food and great nutrition. Where the person leading this effort is Heather Bruskin, who many of you may have interacted with as the longtime head of the Montgomery County Food Task Force. Again, we are expanding. One of the things we learned about through COVID was how important targeted outreach is to a variety of communities across the county. We've won national awards, even an Emmy Award for our work in providing public service to the Spanish-speaking population through the Latino Health Initiative. We're continuing that support through the Latino Health Initiative, the African American Health Program, and the Asian American Health Initiative. We have a guaranteed income pilot program where we're trying to experiment with people of providing direct cash assistance without strings attached as a way to help people become self-sufficient. It's having a promising start where we're working with a variety of local higher ed institutions to do a review of this to see if this is the path forward in providing assistance as opposed to a variety of other approaches that we have used in the community. So again, we provide dealing with mental health services, and we realize that as a community, you can see the impact of mental health needs. We provide mental health services in our elementary schools, high school, middle schools, and high schools. Montgomery County operates its school health program through the health department. Some counties do it through the school system. We do it through our county government. We operate a 24-hour crisis center so that we can respond out to people who are in crisis. We have mental health services through our Health and Human Services Department, specifically aimed at high schools, and our street outreach network to make sure we're dealing with children in neighborhoods and outside of schools. I mentioned our Working Families Income Supplement, our match to the Earned Income Tax Credit. We are continuing to provide increases to the service providers, working with the developmentally disabled or adult medical care providers in our county in order to make sure they can deal with our higher minimum wage and the increasing demand for services. I talked about record money for environmental sustainability and climate change. The council mandated part of our energy tax to go to the Montgomery County Green Bank to help businesses, commercial properties change from to implement and purchase energy saving equipment. We're going to be planting more trees in order to increase the benefit of shade trees. On transportation, we continue to invest in ways to make our street network safer for pedestrians, for motorists, for bicyclists. So we continue to make these safety enhancements. Again, it's one of the interesting things about this region. All roads in Virginia are state responsibility. The neighborhood road to a larger capacity road like Connecticut Avenue to the Beltway. All of those are a state government responsibility in Virginia. In Maryland, most roads outside of the highways and the handful of the major arterial roads like Connecticut Avenue, Wisconsin Avenue, 355, 187, 185, those, anything with a 3-number code to it, those are maintained by the state. Every other road is, unless it's a handful of private roads, every other road is a county responsibility. We've got to provide for that. We provide our own bus service with Ride On. I can explain why we do that, but we have our own local bus service to augment the regional bus service from MetroBus. So it is a different expenditure requirement in transportation, since we are responsible for roads for local governments in Maryland, it's an added complexity and cost to our local budget that, for example, Fairfax County does not have. Now, on the other hand, Fairfax County is responsible for mass transit issues. We have a split in Maryland between some local government, mostly state government. In Maryland, all WMATA costs, Metro Rail, Metro Bus are paid for by the state government. In Virginia, they're paid for by the local governments, but the state has given them additional taxing authority in order to access money to support mass transit. Affordable housing, again, the county executive is very serious about investing in affordable housing. You can see there are a number of things that we're doing in order to provide assistance to mainly our nonprofit partners, the housing in the nonprofit community, the Housing Opportunities Commission, and whatever private developers want to work with us to build housing. The county executive has demanded the county government go through its entire real estate portfolio to see what properties we own already that could be used for affordable housing. You'll see a variety of developments around the county on top of parking lots where we might have an open asphalt surface parking lot where we're going to partner with either HOC, a nonprofit developer, to actually build affordable housing on top of that in order to protect the parking and have access to affordable housing, because you don't have any land costs. So if you're familiar where Benihana is in Bethesda, there are some asphalt parking lots right behind there. We're working with a developer to build affordable housing there. Hey, because we've owned that property and have for decades, there's no land cost there. So we can provide the deal with the developer to just have to pay the cost of the structure because we already own the property. And of course, we're continuing to provide rental assistance to people as we were before COVID, although there's a higher demand now after COVID. I talked a little bit about what we're doing in economic development. The county executive is very proud of the Institute of Health Computing that we are partnering with the University of Maryland College Park, the University of Maryland Baltimore, the University of Maryland Medical System. It has the wonderful acronym of UM3. So for those three University of Maryland institutions, IHC in North Bethesda. The state's very excited about this. Governor Moore was here just a few weeks ago. We would ideally love to see the state build a research center on the right next to the North Bethesda metro station, that huge property, which is amongst the largest open pieces of property in the county, as the anchor institution for a life sciences community right there in North Bethesda, kind of diagonally across the street from Pike and Rose. We are partnering with the state to provide funding to hire faculty, to take out a lease. We'll probably be in one of those buildings right around Pike and Rose for this to start. The dean of the School of Medicine said this program was so exciting that we have the chance to be the Silicon Valley of healthcare moving forward, because you're bringing together the computing industry and the computing talent that the University of Maryland has with the medical talent of both the School of Medicine at the UM Baltimore and in the University of Maryland Medical System, to bring all this work together with our life sciences community here, as well as the benefit of NIH, FDA, to really jumpstart some exciting work into a variety of personally tailored healthcare. You know, one of the aspects, one of the difficulties of developing any new type of drug is you got to find people to test it on, and then you've got to find a sample size of a variety of different people to see how it might work in people's chemistry. You know, overwhelmingly in this country, we have a history of that sample size has been dominated by white men. So we have a lot of pharmaceuticals that deal very well with issues dealing with white men, but we all know that there can be changes in physiology amongst gender, amongst different races for a variety of reasons. This computing power helps figure out a way to address those inequities that have occurred and provide for a brighter future for people in their healthcare. You know, Governor Moore talks about this is Maryland's decade. This is a key component because we are a global center of excellence in this field now. Building upon that is a key component for not only providing great new medical advancements for our residents, the residents of our state, and all of humanity, but also business growth, wealth growth in our community. So it's an exciting opportunity that the county executive has championed for years, and is thrilled that now, with a partner in Governor Moore, with the universities, there is steam picking up in this field. And of course, we continue to put money, as we talked about, in the Economic Development Corporation, our small business initiative, in WorkSource Montgomery, which is the workforce development wing of the county government, as well as making sure we continue to invest in the East County. We're launching a new East County campus for Montgomery College. We're putting in money to make sure whatever opportunities happen in the White Oak Science Gateway area, we are ready to meet all of our commitments there. So in public safety, I mentioned several of these issues around what we're doing in law enforcement, the hiring bonuses, as well as the variety of initiatives around technology. Of course, with corrections, we operate a jail. We have to continue to worry about not just the conditions of the jail and the support for inmates. Of course, we have to continue to make sure our staff are supported, and we're looking at a variety of ways to increase mental health services for our correctional staff. I can see on the chart there are already 41 comments, so hopefully, Alan, you're keeping track of the chat, because I'm not viewing the chat. Again, I talked about some of the investments in our fire service in Montgomery County Public Libraries. We've added hours across the board to make them more accessible. We are trying to put money into making sure we have a diverse amount of in our catalog. We're trying to make sure we have more Spanish language offering, more Chinese language offering, because there's a lot of demand for native speakers of those two languages. We've made our recreation programs free. We've seen a big uptick in people using them, because if you're going to pay a relatively same amount of money to go to a rec center or to go to Gold's Gym, where they're able, for a variety of reasons, to have more extensive equipment, that we are providing a disincentive to people from using our gyms and fitness equipment. So by moving it to free, we have seen an uptick in the number of people who are coming in to use those facilities, which of course helps with wellness and actually helps with a healthier community, which is that much cheaper than from a social services standpoint. I mentioned we're providing assistance to our nonprofit community and the partners that they are in providing services to the public. We've stood up an Office of Grants Management to help nonprofits not only access county dollars, but to help them then go out and get more state and philanthropic and federal funds. And we're trying to bring more order and a degree of efficiency and monitoring of all of these grants through the Office of Grants Management. We have done a lot in the field of elections. It will continue to evolve. Of course, in this budget cycle, if you think about a budget that's going to run from July 1st of 23 to June 30th of 24, we will have a presidential primary during that time. Montgomery County voters have shown themselves very interested in using vote by mail. That's a great tool. It's continued to keep up participation in our elections. It's also costly. So we need to make sure we continue to support our elections when so many people around the country are seemingly fighting. So many other state and local governments are fighting to deprive people of their opportunity to vote. We in Maryland and Montgomery County have embraced the idea of that's figure out ways to get more people to vote. Let's figure out ways to give people to vote by mail, to vote, to get their ballot via the internet. They still have to print it out and mail it in, to give people polling place opportunities. So we've been aggressive at trying to make sure people can vote in Maryland and in Montgomery County, which, again, we hopefully will be an example of why that works, as opposed to places where they want to cut off people's access to the ballot. Of course, we support the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission, especially the Park Network. WSSC has to bring their rate, any rate change through the county councils in both communities. And so they've asked for a 7% rate increase. And again, we're back to the Office of People's Counsel and the support that is needed for the Office of People's Counsel. And with that, I have gone through the entire budget presentation, hopefully, because I'm only able to see myself, Alan, and Jerry. Hopefully my own mother hasn't just fallen asleep during my presentation and is still there. So I'll stop sharing so that we can go to questions.
This is Jerry Garson. I'd like to thank you for giving an excellent presentation. It really looks like you've read the entire budget, and probably there's a lot more of the budget. You probably could speak for a few more hours.
Here's the entire budget.
Oh, you missed one page, I believe.
Yes.
But I have a couple of questions that were given to me previously. One is that I assume that you are aware that the pedestrian master plan put out by the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission, the Planning Board, wants the county to assume all costs of all state roads in the down county area. That would help more unbalance the budget. Are you aware of that? The pedestrian plan wants the county to assume all state roads, that there will be no state roads in down county?
I am aware that the planning staff has put out a large conversation piece in their plan on pedestrian safety. They threw out a lot of issues to spark a community conversation, whether it's taking control of all of the roads in various parts of the county to, I think they even proposed a progressive property tax rate so that higher value properties would have higher tax rates. So they threw out a lot of things. Sometimes we live in a small community. One of my sons, so I have a 16-year-old son, and one of his best friends is the person in the planning, is the daughter of the person in the planning department who put out this report. So we've had lots of conversations off hours about this, and his strong feeling about putting out ideas to help the community to have a conversation about where we want to go. So yes, I'm aware of that. I'm also aware of what they were trying to do in that report. And now my mother can tell my son that I mentioned him in the middle of the presentation.
The other thing that has been brought to my attention, that many senior citizens are currently paying no state income tax due to the $1,750 tax credit for married couples, but are paying income tax to Montgomery County because unused credits cannot be used to offset local income taxes. And the senior citizens are saying, you want to raise our real property taxes by 10%. You're not going to raise the ITOC, which is $692. And yet we get no credit from the state for the excess of the $1,750. So a significant number of senior citizens and even other people are literally paying more in income tax to Montgomery County than they are to the state. Is this fair to the senior citizens, or are we trying to drive them out of the county?
So I got to look into that more, Jerry. I was just writing as you were talking. I was writing down the note because I don't want to, on face value, it's simple to say that it's not fair. I got to figure out how and where that credit is assessed, because that
it's only on for people who are senior citizens against their state income tax. So many of the senior citizens are paying zero state income tax, yet the county tax, if you have unused portion of the $1,750, you can't apply it against the county tax. And people are saying, well, the county is getting even more money from the seniors than the state is.
So I don't know the details of that one enough to be able to give you a good answer.
I'll speak to you further on it.
Yeah, Jerry, send him a note, please. And let's go to Tony Hausner. He has a question. Tony, you're muted and you're invited to speak. Thank you.
Okay, so my question is, there's been increased crime in Silver Spring in particular, but countywide. I'd like to know what some of the things are being done to address that increased crime. You've given some answers to that. And also, if you've looked at the recommendations I've made in terms of how to address these issues. I've sent you an op-ed that I published in the MoCo 360 newsletter.
So, you know, we have been doing a lot to address crime in downtown Silver Spring. And we have moved officers from around the county to Silver Spring. We have put in more money into that district to make sure that they have overtime and enough police officers to deal with the overnight hours, the weekend hours. We have invested in more technology, in cameras, in license plate readers. We're going to be putting, as I mentioned, that drone technology is actually going to be, again, no pun intended, piloted in the Silver Spring, inside the Beltway Silver Spring area. So we have been putting a lot of resources into dealing with crime in downtown Silver Spring. I know we have seen the numbers come down. You know, again, I try to say, to reiterate, you know, this is a national issue. This is a regional issue. If we are down thousands of police and law enforcement throughout the Washington region, it is hard for any of us to be dealing with the issue of growing crime. If DC is down hundreds of police officers for the Metropolitan Police Department, that is going to have an impact. Even if we had every position in the county filled from a police standpoint, we would have spillover impacts into Montgomery County, Prince George's County, into Northern Virginia. And you see that, you know, across the region. I spend a lot of time, I chair the Regional Homeland Security Committee for the COG governments. And I know I talk to my colleagues in Virginia of what they're doing, the amount of money, for example, that Fairfax is dealing with, the crime issues in and around the Tyson's shopping areas between the two giant malls. So this is not a Silver Spring only issue. Now, that doesn't make it any easier for someone in Silver Spring. No one is heartened by the idea of, well, I may not feel safe, or I feel less safe, but, you know, oh, so do lots of other people all over the region. That doesn't make you feel any better. So that's why I wanted to make sure you saw that we were, in fact, pushing in police resources, whether it's actual police officers and the technology that they've asked for. I don't think there's a thing that the police department has asked for to help with downtown Silver Spring that the county executive hasn't agreed to. So we've been working with the council on a late night safety issue. We're going to have a bill that requires all businesses that are open between 2 in the morning and 6 in the morning, other than a hospital or a hotel, to provide a safety plan and work with the police department on that safety plan. If there are 2 incidents that occur in that business, it will provide additional requirements for the police department to be able to hold businesses accountable for the safety their property and their customers. So that will be moving, I think, shortly through the county council, which will provide an additional level of support and assistance to the businesses in the role they play in helping to ensure public safety.
I've got a question, but I want to first ask people, remind them, if you got a question, please raise your hand using the raise hand function underneath the reactions icon. I'll go to you, Eric, after I ask this question. Rich, I'm still confused about the 10% proposal for property taxes and what it's going to be used for. You mentioned your remarks that it's a one-time ask for almost $300 million. And that suggests or states clearly that they wouldn't be asking for another large increase like that above maintenance of effort the year after that. And I'm wondering what kind of assurances do we have either from the Board of Education, MCPS, about them not making another request for a large amount of money, and to sort of put in the context of, can we trust these kind of representations, because the energy tax was supposed to be of limited duration, and it's continued for what, almost a decade now. And I know that the business community's got concerns about that. So what kind of assurances we had from MCPS that this is a one-time deal?
Well, I think you will see a lot of conversation publicly between the executive of the council and the school board and the school system about how they are going to be held accountable for this level of investment, what it's going towards. You know, I don't think it would be sustainable for the county to get into a cycle of increases, of tax increases year after year. So I think the school system is on notice. All of you as voters, you know, there will be 3 of the 7 school board members will be up for re-election next year, because unlike the county council, the school board has some part of it up for election every 2 years. So 3 of them will be up in next year's election. If they are unable to keep that promise, you can send a very powerful message by voting them out of office.
Well, you know, that's a pretty thin gruel about getting rid of incumbents, but I take your point that there is an opportunity. The energy tax has continued for almost a decade, and I know the business community would like to see that reduced on the margins. I've got some other questions, but first,
and the county executive would love to have a conversation about, you know, Virginia provides an extensive corporate taxing structure for local governments that Maryland does not have, and thus we do something like the energy tax, as opposed to, in essence, a version of a gross receipts tax that Virginia has on its businesses. So, you know, there are ways to move away from the energy tax, but you know, when you compare ourselves to DC, which has all the taxing authority of a state, and Virginia, they have a very different approach to businesses, and no one should be left with the impression that somehow we are taxing businesses more than the other communities in our region. Again, the District of Columbia has done a study by their chief financial officer as to what are the business taxes in the region. And believe it or not, Montgomery County comes out as the least burdensome, the lowest tax burden for businesses, both a sample big business and a sample small business in the metropolitan region. So don't think that Virginia isn't taxing in an equal, if not greater role and the District of Columbia about businesses than we are. I mean, one of the things, I know we're recording and you said to be nice, but one of the things that this executive is willing to take on and that we have made as part of our mantra is we are going to be actively countering the Montgomery County sucks industrial complex whenever we can. And part of that is, letting people know that in fact, the tax burdens in Montgomery County are not nearly as high as they are in other parts of our state or in other parts of the Washington region, that we repeatedly come out in comparison, apples to apples comparisons, we repeatedly come out at the bottom for both households and for businesses.
And the county executive did a good job explaining that when he joined us at our February meeting. Eric Cathcart.
Thank you, Alan. And Rich, it's great to see you. Thank you so much for.
Nice to see you, Eric, with a beard.
Yes, I'm working on it. And thank you for your time with us. I've got to go back to the drone thing. As a helicopter just flew over my house, I'm on the inside of the Beltway, and I don't before we spend a lot of money on this technology, have we flushed it by the military? Because the military doesn't seem to really care about the ceiling with their helicopters. Sometimes they're at it feels like they're just at treetop here. I mean, have we had a conversation with the military on this?
We have. I mean, we will need a specific license for what we want to do, but for where it would be in the downtown area, they will be flying low, so they're not going to be high. And we are using, and I would encourage people, there are several jurisdictions in California run drone as first responder programs. If you were to Google drone as first responder and look at the some of these Contra Costa, California, it's you can see how they run their program and how they've had it authorized by the FAA. So, okay. I mean, I'm sure we would run into issues as you get closer to Bethesda. I'm sure we would run into issues around the Walter Reed Bethesda Naval Complex. So I'm sure there are going to be parts of where we're going to have to be careful and selective about where we fly, but everything. Curious. I mean, we already have a drone program. I don't know if you realize this. We already do have a drone program, so that if there is a situation, we have the interesting thing. It's a tethered drone, so we might get up to a situation where there's been a large fire or some other large incident. We have an SUV and the drone goes up, and the whole idea is tethered so that it can keep running from a power standpoint. So I would encourage you, if you're very interested in this, when we have our public safety community day, which will be at the county fairgrounds on May 30th, the whole drone program will be on display.
Cool. Thank you.
We're going to focus on the budget. Karen Cordry.
Yeah, just going back to the property taxes real quickly, in terms of what you were saying about the total levels and so forth. I just was reading something that indicated that the total tax, I guess, that you're paying on your, your mortgage bill every month or something, it's not just the county, it's not just the county tax, there's a whole bunch of other pieces of that. Is that correct? Like a state tax and all kinds of other pieces. So when we talk about going roughly from 99 cents to, I guess, $1.09, you're talking about, we're not talking about a 10% overall increase in your property tax bill. Is that fair? Do you know what the overall percent would be?
Right. It is a 10% increase in the rate, going more or less from $1 to $1.10. It's a 10%.
Right.
The impact on each individual bill is going to be different depending upon were you in part of the county that was just reassessed by the state? What are the, as I'm fond of pointing out, I live on the wrong side of the tracks from Kensington. So I don't, it's fascinating to see the impact that school perceived school quality has on home values. So I live on the north side of Kensington in Rock Creek Palisades. My house was reassessed last year and it went up by a total of $500. You know, it is a, you know, it's already assessed at a lot of money, but I was shocked at how little it went up. If you just go south, almost the exact same home, but just south of the tracks in the Kensington Parkwood area, those homes saw increases in excess of $100,000. So one goes to Einstein, one goes to Walter Johnson. And so, you know, one can see the impact that a good school has on home values. And the executive has tried to point out that if we don't solve the riddle of the school system and the quality of the school system, we will all wind up paying a lot more in the end with reduced values or flatline values, which take out you know, reduce all of our potential household family wealth.
Yeah, I guess the question is just a little bit different though, which is that aren't there a bunch of components of the overall property tax on your bill that go beyond just the county's tax? That there are
Yes,
some-
there's the state. I mean, there is a state income tax, which is 11.5 cents. And I can't imagine that is set by the Board of Public Works in May. I can't imagine that's going to change. It has not changed in years. So, and then there are a series of fees that are attached depending upon where you live. Does the county pick up your trash? Does the county pick up your recycling? Do you pay a water protection charge? All of these various things that are either mandated costs from the state or from the county that charges fees, and that's all built into the components of the property tax bill. And Karen, you have known me long enough that you knew you were going to ask a question and I was going to go and then come back.
Yes.
Thank you.
Anything more you can tell us about how you're going to make the schools better will be great to know too. So.
Okay,
Thank
so
you, Karen.
I'm always fine because my mother is on here that she was very worried when I was little I was never going to talk, but if it weren't for the speech therapy program at MCPS that got me to deal with a variety of speech impediments between kindergarten and third grade. So that's the thing. If we had not had a progressive county government in the 1970s that provided resources, I might be a lot quieter and a lot thinner.
Next question, Elizabeth Joyce. You're muted. Yep.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Rich, so much for being with us. I have many questions, but one of my most intriguing.
Did Alan tell you I get paid by the question? So
Oh, no, I did
the
not
more
know.
questions you ask, the higher my bill is going to go.
Oh, that is so great. Well, you know, we will do what we can. I'm wondering, I think to the average taxpayer, the suddenness of this crisis and the requested tax increase comes as a shock and a surprise. Can you give us some background on why we didn't see this coming and why we didn't prepare for it? Because I know that this kind of proposal will have tremendous political implications. And I'm just wondering how we got here.
Well, you know, part of it is I mean, there are a variety of reasons why we've gotten here at this moment. There are, you know, as I attempted to say at the beginning, we have a tax structure that is designed for a classic growing suburban community of the 1970s and 80s. New housing always bringing in more revenue, more residents, which meant transfer taxes, new property taxes, new income taxes. We have fundamentally changed as a community. We're not the only ones in the region that are facing this change as the region has grown in size, and the fact that the inner ring suburbs have all filled out, and by that's more or less all of the county. When you think of the growth that has occurred all the way up 270, everything that could be built is pretty much built in the county, which means we're in a different cycle when it comes to the support of what property taxes mean and their growth for the county, as well as the other property related, housing related taxes, the transfer tax and the recordation tax. We have, we have amongst the wealthiest people in the country live in our county. This is the first year where, in fact, the income tax is producing more revenue than the property tax. We used to be in a situation where 2/3 of our revenue came from the property tax and 1/3 came from the income tax. We have now passed that point where the income tax is outperforming. And, we have, I mean, this is, to me, it's fascinating that a little more than 3% of the taxpayers in the county, whether it's an individual or a household, depending upon their filing status, have at least $500,000 in taxable income. So not just income, but taxable income. And those roughly 3.2% of the county provide 34% of the tax, of the income tax revenues for the county. So it's progressed, that's how the system is supposed to work. But as they experience differences in their income, that small group of people, we ride some volatility. And, right now, if you want to be prudent for the next year, you can't assume that those high income individuals are going to be paying the same that they have over the last several years, because there have been just tremendously good years from capital gains. Everyone is saying capital gains is coming down, so we have to adjust ourselves to a more stable structure, which is the property tax. And then at the same time, we as a state have implemented a new funding formulas, a new set of educational requirements and funding formulas that drive a lot more resources to students with learning disabilities, other special needs, limited English proficiency, who are at risk of failure due to their economic circumstances, to provide more services in the schools to deal with all the outside of the school issues that get in the way of learning. So we are dealing with a degree of economic volatility, a changing community demographic and structure as far as the importance of real estate, and this new approach to funding, which ideally will position Maryland to being one of the best school systems, including and led by Montgomery County, in the world. If we're going to trying to meet with all of those challenges leads you down to the path of this increase for our schools. And that was a long, because it's not a simple issue of why we're here. But I think the executive tries to say all the time, we face a challenge where if we don't provide adequate resources to the schools and people feel less confident about the school system, it will have a huge negative consequence to so many communities around the county and the outlook that people have towards our county.
Right, to follow up, I think that.
Liz, please, Liz,
I'm
let
sorry.
me pull a question from
Excuse me.
from the chat. Yeah, I'm trying to limit the follow-up questions so we could get to some more. So Eileen Finnegan
And I
asked,
would point out it's 9:07. It's 9:07.
I understand that, but you're having so much fun, we can tell, and you get paid by the question. Eileen Finnegan asked, whatever happened to zero-based budgeting? How does a citizen get a look at each department's detailed budget expenditures, especially the county executive's office? So I have a follow-up question to what she's asking about budgeting. One of the things the county executive emphasized when he first won office was restructuring of county government and how that was supposed to result in considerable cost savings, expenditures for county government. I've seen some, anecdotal things on social media, which says that we've actually added hundreds of employees over the course of the last 4 years. I wonder if you could address that and how we're holding specific departments accountable for their spending.
So there are a variety of reasons why, we have added employees over time. And this is, it's a very interesting conundrum, a policy and political issue. So one of the things that Mark Eldridge was very concerned about when he took office was the high number of contractual employees we have doing the jobs that full-time employees used to have. So in the prior administration, for a variety of reasons, they made a choice of, after the Great Recession, when they did away with a bunch of positions, they backfilled those positions with contractual employees. Mark feels strongly that contractual employees, which traditionally have a greater turnover because they don't have the benefits, the stability that comes with being a full-time employee of the county, that we end up spending more money on those sorts of employees, but it gives you the cover of saying, oh, we haven't grown the size of government, when in fact you have. You've just, my word, you have hidden the personnel cost associated with that. So Mark has been moving positions that were contractual to full-time status. We've done things like, we have long talked about opening a bus rapid transit system. We opened the first line of that, which runs from Burtonsville to the Silver Spring Metro Station. So that took more employees. We have expanded library hours, so that took more employees. So there are lots of reasons across the board where you save money. You save money by moving people from contractual to full-time status, by keeping them on board, but you grow the number of positions. So yes, the number of positions have grown. The size of the county has grown, whether it's the population, the size of the school system. Why is it a surprise that county government is continuing to grow as a result? One of the things that we struggle with, like I've heard private sector employers struggle with this, other local governments, certainly in the region, are struggling with actually filling all the positions. So while we have those positions, we continue to have a vacancy rate of, in some cases, over 10%, because every time you hire 2 people, another one retires. And so there's a churn that has been happening across county government. So
no, we appreciate that. Yeah, so thank you so much. And what about Eileen's question about zero-based budgeting, and how do residents get to deep dive into what various departments and offices are doing?
Yes, if you go to the county website for the open budget section, and let me see if I can pull it right up, and I can, and I will drop the link into the chat. We put out a tremendous amount of information, I think, on our website about the budget. You can look at it by department. You can see by divisions within departments. You can see where the funding is going, how it's changed over time. You can see all the individual capital budget projects that are out there. I really didn't get into the capital budget much at all because this is an off year in our 2-year budget cycle for the capital budget. So it's really just dealing with a small number of amendments as opposed to next year, which will be a very large on-year cycle where the whole 6-year plan is laid out. And in fact, the county executive's first forums for that start later this week for the public to come out and talk about what capital improvements they want to see. starting July 1st of next year. So,
And we will be publicizing that. One last
Right,
question, one last
right.
question.
So,
one last-
so please look at the website, look at the open budget materials. There's a lot that's accessible there to understand what's happening. The county, I think most governments walked away from the concept of zero-based budgeting because of the enormous amount of time that it takes to assemble a zero-based budget when you have obligations. We're not going to close a fire station. We're not going to take equipment out of service. Every time we've tried to do that, the public has fought back. Even when we're able to show like this apparatus no longer needs to be in operation, there is opposition, and the council winds up saying no to those changes.
And then maybe this as a final question, one of the criticism we've seen recently is that the county executive didn't recommend sufficient funds for the Parks Department. They're saying that they're on, the air advocates are saying that the Parks Department's not happy, and they're asking people to, call in, write in for more money for parks. Can you address whether or not funding for parks is underfunded? I saw on your chart that MNC PPC funding had increased, but I wonder about parks in particular.
So we were unable to give parks their entire request. That is why, we have a system that empowers our county council from a budget standpoint, greater than certainly the state government has had and continues to have. So if people are unhappy with the parks budget or any part of the Park and Planning Commission, the council still has the final say on that.
Thanks so much. Any other questions? Seeing none, Chief Administrative Officer, thank you so much for all of your time and all of your answers this evening. We learned so much when you present to the Civic Federation, and we look forward to interacting with you and helping you with the county executive's agenda. So thank you so much.
Thank you. It's great to see all of you, and I know the county executive greatly appreciates the relationship that he has with many of you personally and individually, as well as an organization. And his door is always open. My door is always open to try to answer questions as much as I can. So I was going to ask, I have the most important focus group with my mother, if she thought it was a good presentation. So.
Well, I'm sure you'll hear about that. I'm sure.
I saw she gave you a thumbs up, so I guess that.
Okay, I didn't see, I'm only seeing the top of her head, but between my mother and Helen, hopefully they agreed. So, but it's great seeing so many of you. Sheldon, hello.
Thanks, Rich. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
And thank you for everybody for hanging in there with us for the last hour and a half. Rich was just most recent in a series of really excellent presenters that we've had. In December, we had the chief of police, and then we had Evan Glass and the county executive. And so we're glad people come out and talk to the Civic Federation and answer some of your questions. Before we go to committee reports, does anybody want to make any comments on what we just heard? I'm particularly interested in what you think about the 10% property tax increase and how we should address that. Did you find his answers were persuasive about $200-300 million to MCPS for, I guess, post-pandemic adjustments? Paul, do you have Paul and then Kim?
Sure, I'll make a comment. I mean, he went through he was a very good salesman for the budget. He went through line by line, but he kind of made it like it was a spending race between Montgomery County and the other counties for who can spend the most on Montgomery County on their school system. We threw record amounts of money at the school system this year, over record amounts last year. And this performance of the students in the schools continues to spiral downward. Violence is up. We have police-free drug exchange zones. If you're reading Pugnacio's tweets, he's demonstrated that the money's not going to teacher salary, the money's going to administrative. And it seems like with MCPS, we're throwing good money after bad, and we're not really going after how the money's getting wasted. So in terms of a large property tax increase for a system that's spending almost half their dollars on non-classroom teachers and is not filling the teachers' positions, I'm certainly not happy with that explanation. There's got to be some way to cull the waste of money in the Montgomery County school system. Otherwise, it seems like we can't throw enough money at it. And the way to do that is to just jack up the taxes.
Thank you, Paul. And I saw your comments about the pedestrian master plan. I'd like to talk to you about that at some point too. Kim Prasad.
Hi there. I thought it was very good, and I really appreciate all the excellent speakers that you're having. I agree with the last person who just spoke regarding the school system. We continue to just throw money at Montgomery County Public Schools. And I also want to talk about the racial equity lens that we're supposed to be looking at everything through. And, you know, the whole purpose of Thrive, one of the reasons of having Thrive 2050 is to eliminate all the inequities that have been created. And if you're going to continue to tax us out the yin yang, I mean, we have the recordation tax up, this 10% property tax, we have the walk, bike, and roll, we got to pay for that. How are people supposed to ever be able to afford to buy a house? We're never going to afford to be able to buy a house ever in Montgomery County. And the people who do have houses are now in jeopardy of losing those houses. So I am not in favor of this 10% property tax, this recordation tax. Montgomery County needs to learn how to budget. Montgomery County Public Schools need to learn how to perform and budget their money. So I don't know how you're going to handle this. I'm just voicing my opinion. He's very good at selling, but I'm over it. I'm over Montgomery County Public Schools, and I'm over being taxed and not getting the services that I'm paying for. That's it. Have a good evening.
Well, I don't know how we're going to handle it yet either, Kim, but I appreciate your comment about that. I will say that there's, it's unlikely that there'll be an increase in the recordation tax. It doesn't seem to be a popular proposal from, two of the county council members, and it's unlikely, I think, that the council is going to go along with the 10% property increase because that reflects badly on them as well. Peggy Dennis, your comment.
Yes, about the 300 million extra for Montgomery County Public Schools. He's saying it's a one-time bump up, but my understanding is that once you raise the amount being given to the schools, that determines the maintenance of effort for the next year's budget, which means we're going to be raising that money not once, but in perpetuity.
Very good
Tell me
point.
if I'm wrong.
I wish we could have asked him that when he was on the call. Thank you, Peggy. Luella?
Yeah, I'm off. Yeah, okay. I think that according to what I saw, that it does, it won't affect maintenance of effort in terms of what we'll have to put out generally after years after this. I would point out that, frankly, one of the things, and I think Sheldon will back me up on this for one person, if you really want to see change in the public schools and what they're using their money for, then get involved and make sure you know who's running for the board and what they really are going to talk about. We still don't have equity in terms of their funding for schools in, shall we say, the higher income areas of the county where the students are still generally of similar backgrounds and economic status. And we still don't have parity in terms of giving more money to the schools that need it. But that's not the fault of the county executive. That's the fault of the Board of Education.
I couldn't agree with you more. Thank you, Luella. We'll come back. Chris Reynolds.
There we go. Unmuted. I agree with the last couple of comments. I think there's just across the board in both the county and the school district, an unwillingness to make hard choices and look hard at ways to reduce spending and bring it in line with what we're bringing in from taxes. I think the automatic go-to always is just raise taxes to cover the difference, which it gets, as people have said, it gets harder on people to buy houses, it gets harder on people who own houses to keep them maintained and pay for them. The other way out of this is expanding our economy and growing our economy with new investment. And so I think we need to look to that strongly as a new option, both with business growth and with residential growth. We need more people here paying more taxes, and that's how we afford the things that we want.
That was a good way to back into that issue, Chris.
Yeah, you like that?
But yeah, but that's the bottom line. We need more jobs. And with more jobs, with more jobs and with more income, a lot of these problems are going to take care of themselves. There is, to Luella's point, there's not a lot of equity between the resources that go into the east part of the county as opposed to the west part of the county. We need to pay teachers more when they need to have better teachers. And I've been sitting, I've been doing this stuff for 20 years now, and we have the same issues. And this part of the county is underserved, and the buildings are not in the same condition. The parents don't have enough money. It's just it's unfair, and the reputation that we had when I came here in 1995 has definitely changed over the course of the last 2 decades. Quint, your hand is raised. You've got a question? Or
I just have a comment. I think that one problem that we have is that we're avoiding the elephant in the room. And the elephant in the room is, how much is it costing the county to assimilate immigrants into the county? It's costing us in crime, education, lower education, low income housing, availability, access to medical care, all these things. And I think how can Montgomery County assimilate everyone in the world who is disadvantaged? And I think we have to realize what we can do, and we have to address the problem. And we're not addressing the problem. We're trying to address the outcomes that we're experiencing right now. So Montgomery County has done a poor job in assimilating the freed slaves into our population that happened over a century and a half ago. And those people are still disadvantaged. And we haven't, some of them have gotten out of poverty and some of them are doing fine, but it hasn't extended to a lot of there are still ghettos of these people. And I just think that the way to deal with this is to have more people come alongside of these people, have more mentoring programs to assist people in making good decisions and helping them in trying to really be assimilated into the county and use their money wisely. And there's all sorts of things that we can do to bring these people in. And I've done it with a few number of people. I've worked extensively in Honduras. It's a lot cheaper to help people in Honduras than it is here. Technically, I'm helping 10 families in Honduras right now. And I could not possibly afford to do that in the United States. I can't even help one, hardly. It's so expensive. I can brush a few dollars, but it's too expensive. And we're hurting our own population by trying to help others in the way that we're doing it. And so I think it's nice that we have education programs for the children, but if the parents don't speak English, it's pretty hard to help the children make good decisions because their parents aren't helping. And I can give you on the street examples of this, but I really don't want to expose people's personal situations. But we have to look at the problem a lot differently than throwing money at it. And 10% is just going to be another 10%. I've mentored in the school system. You can't even mentor in the school system now. We have 10 people in our organization who want to mentor in the school system, and we've been trying to get in as mentors since last August. And we were in a mentoring program before COVID. We can't get in it now. We're just being boxed out. People who are trying to help are being boxed out. And I think it costs nothing to have people donate their time to mentor. And I'll tell you, the 3 success cases that I've had in mentoring outweigh all the money that the county has thrown in at these people. So that's my 2 cents. And I think
We appreciate
all
all
of our leaders need to look at the real problem.
we appreciate all the points of views, and it definitely is a third rail in Montgomery County politics. We don't hear that point of view very often. There are inequities, and money will help in some of those situations. Liz, Joyce, you're next.
That's, it was news to me. I only realized this several years ago that 1/2 of the county budget goes to the schools. And as far as I understand, the school board is accountable, is supposedly responsible for these expenditures. What accountability is there, or what assessment mechanism is there to analyze how the school board is using the resources that they have? This is a question. I have no idea, but I do know that things are spiraling out of control, and the property owners who basically do support equitable education, or they wouldn't be here, are being heavily taxed, and businesses are not being grown. And as Quinn pointed out, it's not even generally recognized that the changes in the population, which we all basically support, have had enormous impacts on the schools. But my big question is, who holds the school board accountable except for the voters? And most voters do not have a clue as to what they're doing.
It's a good point, and that's why I mentioned to Rich Madaleno that the elections really don't hold anybody accountable, because incumbents get reelected, with high percentages. Luella, your comment?
Actually, I was going to change the subject matter slightly. You asked the question of what people were going to be concerned about, the 10% or the 10% raise. I don't think most people are going to even know what happened until they get a tax bill, and then they may wonder how come the bill went up. I don't think most people are even aware that, they're not. That's my take.
No, I agree with you. Most people don't know how the money in the budget is spent. Most people don't know that, most of it, a lot of it goes to interest, a lot of it goes to the police. And even with, I don't know, Jerry, do you know offhand, 300 million going to the police department, to public safety? Why are incident crimes so high in some different areas of the county? Jerry's probably looking that up.
I'd have to look at the exact numbers, but even though we have less police officers around, the costs go up. And part of it has to do with the benefits that Montgomery County provides to all retired employees and all current employees. Almost every other government in the country says once you turn age 65, you should be covered by Medicare. Montgomery County, in its infinite wisdom, said, well, Medicare isn't good, even though, so we have our own plan, and we get no benefit from each one of the retirees on their Medicare costs. The retirees are just on an average income of paying $2,041 a year in Medicare taxes, which are actually just basically the county gives up. And there are a whole series of things like this that the county has never really stopped and saying, well, they don't want to increase the current salaries, but they keep increasing the benefits. And this is why our total cost per employee is way out of line with most other areas. I mean, we discovered the average ride-on bus drivers' benefits are a significant portion of their actual salaries. And the benefits keep going even after the people retire. And the county has to say, no, if you can be covered by Medicare, you're covered by Medicare. The county shouldn't be paying hundreds of millions of dollars for retiree benefits. I know it's controversial, but the question is how many taxpayers we lose. And Rich pointed out a very interesting thing. Well, the schools start deteriorating in rich areas, we'll get even less real estate taxes. Well, real estate taxes have gone up significantly, and a quantity of senior citizens that are living on Social Security and a small IRA or CAO plan just can't even afford the county. And when the county says we want to add 200,000 people, well, you expect the education costs to go up if we add 200,000 poor people? What do you expect them to go down? And they keep saying we have to build affordable housing. Well, affordable housing means those people aren't paying their fair share of taxes. And the county at some point will just bust. It might be 10, 20, 30 years from now, but they just don't quite understand how to really budget correctly and how to really rein in some of the benefit costs. And they're going to say, if we want to increase the teachers' salaries starting, we can't proportionally increase the benefits of all the teachers who've been here for 30 or 40 years.
So
And all the other government retarees. It's a complex thing.
there was
And
a lot.
budgeting is not easy.
There was a lot of stuff in there, Jerry. There was a lot of stuff, and just reinforces a notion that I have is that the county government, they assume that citizen activists can fill in the blanks and plug the holes in terms of this kind of analysis. We really need to hold the county executive and the county councils and their staff to a higher level.
I'd like to add one other thing, that the actual school board members, if you speak to them one at a time, they really have no control over the budget. They have no paid staff. They can't even ask questions about the budget, and they basically get a budget from the current staff of non-teaching people, and they just rubber stamp it. They don't have the manpower or any staff to actually analyze the budget. So it's not even the school board members' fault.
No, it goes to Liz's point. How do you hold them accountable? They basically, sign off on the budget documents that they get from the superintendent and the associate superintendents, all of whom are paid, with high six figures, and teachers, have to, get contributions for, classroom equipment. So it's a situation that needs more focus. The county council doesn't have any. They basically approve the school board requests, and they don't do a deep dive because they don't have the staff really to do the deep dive in all these issues as well. So it's the beginning of a conversation that we don't really get a chance to have too much at these meetings, and we need to figure some way to do deep dives in all sorts of subjects, including Mr. Reynolds, the housing issues. I, for one, would love to see us do a deeper dive into the things that are going to come down the pike about housing. You've seen what they've done in jurisdictions all across the country, most recently in Arlington, where you got to figure the county council soon is going to come up with a plan for comprehensive upzoning throughout the county. I've said in this forum and other forums that even when there's even if there was comprehensive upzoning, we wouldn't see a major increase in housing for many years. So it doesn't really bother me as much, and as it bothers some of you who are on this call right now. There wasn't a big increase in the what do you call it, the accessory dwelling units. We haven't seen a lot of those, and that was 10 years ago, 8 years ago. So it's but my issue last year was that the conversation wasn't a fulsome conversation about housing, because they weren't talking about deeply affordable housing, and most of the people they expect to come here over the next 30 years are going to need deeply affordable housing, and we weren't talking about that, and we're more likely to see people leave the jurisdiction because they can't afford to live here. So we need to figure some way to have a conversation about that. Maybe we can put together a small group of people who are interested in those issues and try to do some of the deep dive that they did in Arlington County's got a civic federation, and they did lots of good work, analytical work with some consultants on what ways you look at increasing, housing for all, including deeply affordable housing. It's coming to the end of our time. It's 9:38. We can quickly go through. Anybody else have anything to say before we go through our committee issue areas? Well, I'm thinking about it. For those of you who are actively involved in your civic associations, if you want to send us your web addresses, so Jackie can put them up on our website, so they'd be a resource for people who are interested in learning more about what these different groups are doing. You'd be interested to see what they have at North Hills of Sligo. They amaze me every month with the kind of innovative programming they come up for their civics. Oh, there you are. Yeah, and they've got a bunch of stuff coming up soon. So if you've got some best practices, if you've got websites you want to share with us, please share with us. And if you've got anything you'd like to publish in our newsletter, it's open to members, interested members of the community. You'll see in our April newsletter, there's a long article from the Montgomery County Taxpayers League, basically picking apart the county executive's budget. And that's the kind of thing we'd like to see. If there was an article about housing for all, Mr. Reynolds, you could send that and we could put that into. So we have some committees and we need committee chairs. Anybody wants to be a committee chair? You can be a committee chair. Be a co-chair, you can be a co-chair. If you want to be in the executive committee, we'll put you on the executive committee. If you want to be an officer, we're in the process of getting nominations for officers for our next federation year. Education is our first committee, I think, alphabetically. Anybody want to say anything about education as I quickly go through this list? Okay. Liz made the point that they get, half, 50, more than 50% of the budget, and that's billions of dollars. And, you expect to have better educational outcomes for that. And we're not really getting them. Environment, is Sheldon still on the call? Does Sheldon want to say something about the environment? He is one of our gurus. Can we report, Peggy, that they passed the chain of custody on the synthetic turf?
They did not.
They did not. Okay, there you are, Sheldon. Did they?
They did not pass it. We expected it to pass, but it did not pass. It passed in the House 101 to 31. It got a good hearing in the Senate EEE committee, and we thought it was going to get a vote, and it never got a vote in the EEE committee, and therefore it never got a vote in the Senate, and therefore it died.
Well, that's bad news.
Is really bad news. The bill was, the chain of custody bill was a bill that cost $65,000 altogether for 5 years. So it's not a big budget bill. It just required people to report when they installed a new synthetic turf field and when they replaced it 8 to 10 years later. So it was not it was information that the Maryland Department of Environment does not now have. And it's important to be able to trace these fields to know where the fields are when they're being disposed. That's all it did. And I won't take any more time to talk about the politics of it, but we'll be back next year, hopefully, and have learned our bitter lessons and win this time.
And we will support it again next year like we did this year or last year and the year before. Jackie Boko sent me an article that maybe some of you have already seen. Thank you, Harriet. Every year. Text messages are fun during these meetings. Jackie sent me an article from the Washington Post that was published today at 6:43, sort of does a summary of what the General Assembly, the big bills the General Assembly passed this year. Leading their list was recreational cannabis, God help us, because people are recreating with cannabis right now. Lord knows what it is when they empower it. Abortion as a referendum item, in, I guess, the next election next year. Stuff about child sexual abuse, gun control, expanding the Attorney General's authority. This is in this Washington Post article, paid family leave. The Maryland 529 plan, for those of you who know what that is and are interested, transgender health care. And then apparently Governor Moore pitched 10 bills to the legislature, and they all look like they're going to pass. So that's in the Washington Post. I'm sure it'll be all sorts of places soon.
Alan, if I could just have one more sentence, I want to thank the Civic Federation and Jerry Garson for his excellent testimony on the chain of custody bill. I want to thank you very much.
Go, Jerry.
Yeah, thank you, Jerry.
Our group is getting smaller and smaller. Peggy, do you want to say anything else about legislation?
Now I'll have a complete wrap up once the session is over, and then we'll find out how the bills that we were supporting fared.
I think we got another 2 hours and 15 minutes for that, so it'll be over. Land use and planning, Liz, do you want to say anything about land use and planning issues?
Did we talk about the Office of People's Counsel tonight? Did we talk about the Office of People's Counsel?
We did. We encourage people to sign up to testify on the 18th. We encouraged them to send in testimony. We directed them to page 11 of the Civic Fed newsletter, which has a sample letter. And then Rich Madaleno talked a bit about why it was important. And so,
and Alan has very kindly put up the link to sign up for that hearing on the chat. So you can go to it right now, click on it, sign up, should be a piece of cake.
And Peggy made the point that the more people sign up, it's an indication to the council that we care about this particular issue.
Yeah, sign up in opposition.
Yes, please.
But it's simply $250,000 in a budget of what, $6 billion? And
Right.
There's no excuse. There's no excuse. The budget of the planning department is $25.4 million, and they're asking for 1.7 million more. And especially in view of their extraordinary performance over the last few years, that's quite something. So why shouldn't the citizens have $250,000 worth of representation? Because they don't want us to have it. It's really, there's just nothing to say about this except it's such a very bad idea, and it's an insult.
As I mentioned at the outset, and you probably heard, is that, there's an October 4th, 2016 article in the Washington Post by Bill Turk talking about how Berliner wanted to get rid of this office in the exact same way as Friedson. So same office, same issues. So this is a long-term strategy to tilt the playing field in favor of development and away from sort of community participation. And I think we need to push back on that.
And people need to not only sign up in opposition to the bill, but let it be known that they are very much in support of the Office of the People's Counsel, which is in Elrich's budget.
Right. Land use and planning. So next thing we've got public finance. We don't usually get any comments about that. Public safety. Tony Hausner made some good points about, we're spending all this money, what's happening downtown Silver Spring. I thought Madaleno talked about it in some detail in Silver Spring, where some of us live. And we've decided it's not really a late night issue, it's a daytime issue, and we'd like to see more visibility. There have been some problems with, large parties, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning and crazy things happening. But, there's armed carjackings, which are up around the region. And I think that if the cops would be out there with their blue lights on their car, going up and down Georgia Avenue and Fenton Street and Colesville Road, people think twice about doing bad things in our community. But that wasn't a conversation that they want to have right now. Jerry Garson, transportation. Do you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, they've announced that they think the purple line is going to be completed in late 2026. Yeah, I don't know what the odds are on all the sports books that we have, but I would really doubt if they'd complete it on time. And also, one of the comments I've received, how come there's so many of our county cops on 270 giving out tickets where the state police have the really primary responsibility? And they said, wouldn't it be nice if these same police that are patrolling 270 actually patrolled neighborhoods that don't have any state police patrols?
Yes, that would be good. And so we'll ask them about that. We have a Safe Silver Spring meeting in May. We'll send out notices for everybody in the greater Silver Spring area who wants to ask questions of Commander Dave McBain, as Commander of 3rd District. The Greater Silver Spring Democratic Club is going to have a meeting like this, a Zoom meeting next Wednesday at 7:30 with Chief Jones and State's Attorney McCarthy, just as part of our public outreach to the community about public safety issues. Everybody is welcome to join. This time we're going to use one of the registration things where you have to register to get the Zoom link, but we hope some of you can join us.
And I want to make one last comment. They keep talking about bus rapid transit. Well, the whole idea that we're going to get all this money from the P3 program that's basically dead to fund the 355, the BS Mill, and all these other bus rapid transits. Well, that money has now disappeared. And also, one of the problems that they've done by shutting off 2 lanes on Old Georgetown Road, they've diverted a significant amount of traffic onto 355. That means the BRT probably isn't even possible with the amount of traffic that they've diverted onto 355 and onto Connecticut Avenue and onto 7 Locks Road. They just don't quite understand, and they issued this report on Old Georgetown Road saying how great it is, how we've had less accidents, but what we've seen is a significant increase in accidents on 7 Locks Road, on Connecticut Avenue, and on Rockville Pike, which seem to offset all the savings in accidents on Old Georgetown, because you're putting more traffic and it's actually beyond capacity. So people are rushing to make the next lights and that. And this whole project, they're patting themselves on the back. And in my opinion, it's been a total failure.
We appreciate all opinions, Jerry, and I'm sure the DOT disagrees with that analysis, but they did not talk about 7 Locks Road and some of the other roads.
The other roads. Well, if you look, this is how government looks at only one street, and they don't look at where the diversionary traffic went. I've gotten numerous complaints, and if you read the various different things like our neighborhood notices, everyone seems to be very upset with what's been happening.
That is true, except the bikers. Quint, do you have a question or
I
comment?
just had a comment on Channel 5. They had a news article about 8,000 people had signed a petition requesting they return the traffic to normal on Old Georgetown Road. There's some way we could support that. I don't know any more than what I heard on the news. And of course, there's no bicyclists per se on any of these roads, and we're just losing lanes to emptiness. And if there were somebody there, they easily get killed on a right-hand turn. So
We need to work on a deliberative process to, come up with a, consensus position on all of these complicated issues. We really need more help, Civic Fed Executive Committee officers and the substantive committees, the standing committee. So please don't be shy. We don't bite, and we could use your help. Anybody else have anything they want to say this evening? Peggy Dennis.
Yes, the committee that begins with A, the awards committee. We would love to have a real in-person awards event this year. We would love to have some nominations for both the Wayne Goldstein Award and the Gazette Award. So go check them out in the newsletter. And then if you can think of an individual or group who has been doing wonderful things for the county in either respect, please let me know. I'm a chairman of a committee that needs input. Please help me out.
One of the things I was thinking about this driving back from New Jersey this afternoon, we can use the American Legion as a venue. We've done a meeting there before. So there's a possibility, so we can have a conversation about that later. That would be,
Right.
free. So that's the advantage of that. Anybody else have
The
anything?
venue is less important than the fact that we have individuals that we want to recognize with awards. That's our top
No.
priority at the moment.
Venues are important, and we'll talk about them in the executive committee next Thursday. Anybody else have anything else they'd like to say? Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
Seconded.
all those in favor?
Aye.
See you guys. Talk to you soon.
Thank you, Alan.